All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hey, everybody! Happy Wine Wednesday. Hope you're having a fabulous one. And I'm going to figure out why we cannot see the Hangout. But hello, and welcome. Let's make sure we get this working correctly real quick. And then we'll go from there. All right, let's see. I've got the Hangout. Sorry, everybody. We'll be going in just a second. There we go. All right, now we've got the Hangout so that you can join. I actually had someone contact us asking some questions, had some sick seahorses, and so I advised that person. Obviously, we'll help them in message if we need to, but I also mentioned that we'd be live, and they could, of course, come hang out with us and join a Hangout and show us what's going on. So hopefully they'll show up. Anyhow, how is everyone tonight? Drinking on some Chardonnay tonight. I almost bought Pinot Grigio because I was thinking of my very, very good friend Jessica Stam. And I miss her desperately. And anytime I drink Bloody Marys or Pinot Grigio, I think of nothing but Jessica Stam. Ray, I saw you just joined. I just want to finish and say, Jessica, I love you. Toast to you, even though it's Chardonnay. All right, Ray, how are you?
Yesterday, I found an Astorina on one of my barbs.
Oh, really?
And so today, well, last night I put her in a 10-gallon tank, and I've got her with the Furan too.
Okay.
When I got it off, it's quite a wound.
Really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't believe, first of all, that an Astorina, they move so slow. How the hell can they get on the seahorses?
Well,
And I don't understand why they get on them, because normally they're on the glass and on the rock feeding until I catch them and throw them in the hot water. But they just keep on showing up. I can't get rid of the damn things.
okay, well, I can actually answer your questions for once. The reason that they crawl onto, or not crawl, but get onto seahorses is because think about it. Seahorses grow algae
Well,
on
mine
their
has got
skin.
algae.
Well, even if you can't see it, I'm gonna
Yeah.
guess that there's some sort of, something. That's my guess. And I think that, or maybe they just. I mean, I'm not positive. I just know that because
I'll
of
look
the.
at it under the microscope
Yeah,
later on tonight then and see.
I would love to hear what you figure out because I've had it happen to me too. My seahorses at the time did have algae growing, so obviously it's a different situation. So I'm curious to hear what you figure out. But the reason that they can get on them is because and when a seahorse is, especially like when they're sleeping or whatnot,
Yeah.
they're very slow too. They just crawl right on, and I think that you know seahorses can't flick things off as well as other fish, and so they just latch on and don't let go. But so what? How did you notice what was going on? Did you see the star on it?
Well, I did the final feeding last night at 9 o'clock, and I noticed the seahorse just wasn't acting normal. And so I look at it, and I didn't see anything at first until I saw the other side. And then this stupid Astorina on it. I mean,
So
I've had them for a while now, ever since I put the corals in,
right.
but I can't get rid of them. anything I put in the tank to kill them off is going to kill off the limpets.
Kill off the what? Limpets, you said?
Limpets.
Yeah, I love those things. um, okay, so when you did remove the seahorse, take it out, get the star off of it, put it into observation, and obviously you're using
Oh,
Furon.
it's got a big wound on it that's worse today.
What's the wound look like? Just a spot, or can you describe it?
Well, it's not a round spot. It's just sort in a regular shape. Um, uh, yeah,
Is
I
it
don't know
just
how.
like, is it white, or does it have a red center, red outer ring,
No,
anything? Just
there's
white?
no redness to it yet. It looks like there might be some pink to it, but mostly it's a pale color. Like the seahorse itself is basically a yellowish color, a yellowish brown.
Mm-hmm.
But this spot on it is irregular. It's like if I put a pot of colored water on a table and then muck my fingers in it, pulling it out different spots. Like if you put a spot of water, it's going to be circular on there. But if you can draw it out, and yeah, I'm not doing well to explain it.
I know what you're saying, and I know what you're trying to say, and it's difficult to say. It just, you can tell there's a problem right there. And since you actually caught the seahorse, or I always
Yeah,
pronounce it correctly, the starfish.
I would never have guessed that the Asterina was on
Astrina.
it if I didn't see it.
Right. And see, and a lot of people, just for the record, anybody tuning in late, what we're discussing right away is those little teeny tiny white starfish that you find all over your tank, that people don't realize can actually crawl up on a seahorse, try to, you know, I personally believe it eats algae off the skin of the seahorse, but either way, it will cause a wound, which can become a bacterial infection, and all sorts of trouble. And I noticed that Dan has joined us. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Bah humbug.
Bob.
Sounds like me tonight.
How was your holiday, sir?
Quiet.
Quiet. Well, hey, that's better
Yep.
than noisy.
Yep. Didn't have to stay up all night putting kids' toys together this year, so
Oh, I mean, you
I
know
did
what?
bail. I did.
Go
I
ahead.
did bail my son-in-law out after he was up all night. But
Mm. So you had to.
Actually, I prefer the days when I had kids small enough around. But hell, the youngest grandkids are 19 now.
See, not me. I disagree with you both. This year, my girls turned 12, and they said, Mom, we just want money. And I was like, you got it. Deal. And it was easy and it was great. We got to enjoy family and, the holiday versus, me scrambling around trying to worry about playing Santa. But, anyways,
I
um,
like them up to 8 to 10 in that range, and then they start getting old enough. They'd rather be with their peers than hanging around with grandpa.
right. No, I hear you. I hear you. So, Dan, you had a quiet holiday. What else is going on with you? You okay?
yeah, not much else. Same old stuff.
Have you ever had any experiences with the starfish causing problems?
Personally, no, because of my tank setups, but I've had
Right.
customers that have had issues.
And do you know? Because obviously, I don't know the scientific reason. I've always just assumed it was because, algae growing on the skin of the seahorses. Do you know if there's another reason why they kind of seems
Well,
to happen often?
they're opportunistic feeders. I mean, they're going to
Right.
go where they think they can get food, and
Mm,
seahorses being somewhat, um, sedentary gives an opportunity for them to get on them.
sure. Sure. Well, Ray, I definitely want you to keep us updated because I know
So I
that
will.
every time that I've had that situation happen, which was only twice, but each time it did not turn into some huge problem. It was easily fixed. One time I didn't even use medications. I just put the seahorse in a different aquarium and fresh salt water, and it was fine over time. So I've got my fingers crossed for you. Go ahead.
In most cases, that's the way it turns out. But occasionally, I have had instances where it turned into, you know, a nice size infection in that area.
She's not even feeding on live adult brine shrimp.
Oh, she's not eating at all?
No, she's not hooked on anything. She's on the bottom, so her tail rests on the bottom, and she's just on a, well, not quite a 45-degree angle, but just kind of motionless. And the pulse rate is about normal, but that she's worse now than when I put her in last night.
Let me
How
ask
do you
you.
check? How do you check the pulse?
Sorry?
How do you check the pulse?
Sorry.
Well, respiration is what I meant.
Oh, okay.
That was a great question. I have one though too. I'm just curious, because it's kind of a tendency, when you care
I've
about
got
your
a blood pressure tester. It checks pulse rate.
when you care about your seahorses, though, of course you want to fix them anytime there's a problem. So, my quick question is: was the seahorse acting this way before she went into the medicated aquarium, or no?
Not that bad. Like when I noticed her in the tank, when I went to feed, I noticed things weren't right, and I
Right.
didn't see the asterina at that time, but I knew something wasn't right, and I was kind of perplexed. But
How, how did you get the astrina off of her?
I picked at it with my fingers a little bit at a time to pull each portion of it up.
Did you try a freshwater dip first?
Hell, when I freshwater dipped the rock that the coral was on, I bought a coral was on a rock. I freshwater dipped that before I even put it in the tank. And
No, I meant this. I meant the
do that.
seahorse.
I know.
Pardon?
I think his point is though that it didn't kill the stars.
No, I wouldn't expect it to kill it, but sometimes a
Oh.
freshwater or formalin dip will knock them off.
No, I don't have formalin anymore. What I had went bad, and then now I can't find any.
Well, for the record, Ray, I did the exact same thing when I was in the situation. I tried to pick it off, but I can see where Dan's going with this. Dan, you want to
I
take
was
it
in
home?
panic mode at that time anyway.
Well, the idea is if you can get it to drop off instead of pulling it off, there's less chance of
Yeah.
creating more of a wound.
Right.
Well,
I probably,
there was
if the freshwater
actually
dip,
you could see markings where the asterina wasn't, so it's moved around.
yeah, if the freshwater dip didn't work, I'd probably do a drop of alcohol topically right on top of it.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, it's too late now.
Yep.
Now, why do you say that? Do you think? I mean, do you think it's? Are you saying it's too
Well,
late? Like, as in it's like too late, or is
It's
too
too
late for
late
what you're
now
doing?
to
Okay. Okay.
change how I took it off.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I was just in panic mode, and
No,
I
I
reacted.
understand. We all do. um, but yeah, I want you to definitely keep us updated. Dan, I can hear it. What are you drinking tonight, Dan?
um, patties
Water.
until no patties until I run out. Then I'll have to go to potato juice.
Oh boy. All right. So it's going to be a fun Wine Wednesday. Yay. Anyways, no, Ray. Yeah, absolutely no judgment. I did the exact same things, and it's good for everyone, including me, to hear this advice from Dan, because that's a really good. It didn't even cross my mind to do a freshwater dip. So very interesting, and I'm just hoping that she does well and that everything works out. But what else is going on with you guys? Anything?
Who are you speaking to?
Both of you. Anything else going on?
No, that's enough. It's got me upset.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I
I'm starting to release my dwarf erectus.
Ooh, yeah. So how does one buy the dwarf erectus?
They either call me or they message me, and that's how we do it.
Gotcha. And are you okay? If you're not okay with it, it's fine. But do you want to share like price point or anything or
The same
any of?
price as before, $64.95.
Okay. And they're available now. So hey.
Yep.
We will actually put contact information in the description when we're done. And I actually, Ron Boyer actually contacted me about dwarf seahorses. I'm going to ask him if he's interested in the dwarf erectus. But have you heard anything, Dan, about dwarfs anywhere? Like actual dwarfs?
What do you mean?
like anyone
As
selling
far
them.
as, well, Alyssa sells them.
She does. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if she had them in stock. I didn't even check yet. So
I don't know if she has any in stock, but I know she was breeding them. But she's about the only source for captive bred at the moment, unless other than a private breeder.
now wait. So Alyssa is actually doing captive bred dwarfs, or
Yeah.
wow. I guess I didn't even realize that. That's awesome. Okay. Well, I'll pass on the
Um,
information if he doesn't see this stream. Go ahead.
Captive bred dwarfs are great in terms of conservation, but other than that, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, I don't. There's not a big advantage between captive bred dwarfs and wild dwarfs as there is with the other seahorses.
Right. And I understand what you're saying, but can you go ahead and explain that really quickly for the.
Well, the difference is your captive bred seahorses will eat frozen food and typically be hardier. The dwarf seahorses, you're going to have to do live foods regardless. Um, so it's going to be the same amount of work with captive or wild. Um, but you do, there is a conservation element to it that makes it to where you should buy captive when they're available.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm sorry. I was actually checking to see if um, Alexander Shapiro, who has contacted us regarding help with his 60 horses, had actually commented back. Sorry about that. Anyhow, okay. So Alyssa very well might have the captive bred dwarfs available, which is the conservation yes answer to dwarfs. And otherwise, aren't they pretty much easily found? Or not
Easily what?
anymore? Are they not easily found or available?
I don't think there's as big of a market for them today because the majority of the people understand more that dwarfs are a crapload more work and they're not any cheaper than the full grown seahorses when you're all said and done.
Sure, and I agree. I was just asking because, I was asked. Okay, so what else do you want to tell us about the dwarf erectus? I'm sorry, I got off track.
Well, currently they're about 10, 11 months old.
Okay.
Um, they range from about 1 inch to about 3 inches in size. Um, they there might be some that are slightly bigger than that. Um, but it's funny to look at a 1.5 inch erectus that you can obviously tell it's a male.
Right.
Um, the they've had some of them have actually had fry already. Um, they eat frozen just like the regular erectus do. They're just smaller. And what I can't say is, will they ever get big? I very seriously doubt it. One of the reasons I hung on to them for so long was to verify that they would, they weren't going to just turn into a regular size erectus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so,
So
it's
basically,
just,
guys, it's like designer clownfish. We've got designer
well,
seahorses.
no, they look like regular erectus,
I
except they're just
know.
smaller.
I mean, that's a difference. It's different. I'm going with it. We're gonna keep it. Anyhow, go on. Sorry.
Um, that's really all there is to it. I mean, it in theory, because they're so much smaller, you could put a few more in a tank than you would, the full size because the bio load is going to be a little bit smaller. But I still recommend going with light stocking densities.
Sure. So basically, just for anybody new, the advice is to do 30 gallons per pair. And with these guys, you might get away with a few. You might get away with a little leeway there, but it's still what Dan recommends. Correct?
Yeah, I usually
Basically.
tell people 25 to 30 gallons per pair. And with these guys, I'd probably say go 20 to 25.
Gotcha. Oh wow. Well, a lot of people ask about, seahorses they can put in a 20, so we need some testers.
Well, the caveat that I have with going with small tanks isn't the fact of the volume as much as it is the small tanks are harder to properly filter.
Gotcha. No, absolutely correct. You know what? I had a go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, no, I just saw somebody asked a question about the dwarf seahorses.
I was gonna say, guys, I'm gonna let you answer, Dan, but I was gonna say I literally, when I went like this and clicked, it was because I wasn't seeing any of the comments. So I'm seeing them now. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Um, the question was, what kind of care do the dwarf erectus require? They are in fact the same as the others. They're just smaller. They eat frozen food. They handle the flow in the tank just like the full size do. I have them all in a 75 gallon tanks with an overflow, standard, off the shelf 75 gallon tank, and they do fine with. I think I have the flow somewhere between 10 to 12 turns per hour.
10 to 12, you said?
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, well, really quickly, I wanted to say thank you so much, Salty Reef, for the super chat. Hope you're doing well. Hope we see you back in here soon. I know you're super busy with your new aquariums, new baby, and all of the things you're doing in the new year. But we miss you, want you back up in here, and we're just so glad to have you in the comments. And thank you for supporting the channel as always. Also, Venesoir #1. Thank you for subscribing. You get that pretty thing that goes across and drops something into the wine glass. That's every time that you guys do anything to support the channel because we appreciate it. Also, I wanted to say very quickly, sorry, Ray, I know I'm boring you. Hello, Fantasy Dream Creations. Hey, Lucy, I'm just now seeing your comments. Hey, Nicole. Hey, to Mermaid's Reef. If I missed it, hey, Kim. If I missed, hey, MS. I just want to say hello to everybody. And if I've missed anything or any questions, please repeat, or you guys, of course, call me on it. Hey, Chris Grise. And Chris asked if they, did you already answer whether or not they can be mixed with regular sized Erectus, Dan?
I did not answer that. Yes, they can. The only thing is if you're looking to set up breeding pairs and you already have Erectus, I wouldn't want to mix them with full-size Erectus for breeding purposes. But they can habitate with them with no problem at all.
Right. Depends a lot on your goals. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's just hard for them to breed when one's 6 to 8 inches and the other's 3 inches.
Sure. So what else?
But
Go ahead.
But then again, I have seen a Rottweiler breed with a Chihuahua before, so.
Right. What? Good comparison. Great comparison. Well, Ray, do you have something you wanted to comment?
Oh, I just was typing there. Didn't even follow what you were saying, to be honest with you.
It's okay. I forgive you. I honestly, if I try to sit here and try to go through all the comments that I missed, I'll sit here staring at a screen. So I'm not going to do it. So if there's anything that I did miss, feel free to answer or bring it up in here or whatever. Sorry, guys, I wasn't seeing the comments, but all right. Well, Dan,
MS now wants to know how you detect bacteria.
go ahead.
You just do preventive things so that you don't have to.
Now, wait, what was the question? How do you detect bacteria?
Well, if you've got the right kind of scope, you can look for it, but that's not practical for the average hobbyist. But that's why I keep telling people, in my opinion, you just have to do excessive husbandry and water changes. And if you start seeing something like pouch emphysema or any sign of a bacterial wound, you know you're not doing enough and you've got to do more. And once you get to the point where nothing goes wrong anymore, then you know that regime is probably okay for you, at least at that time with the conditions you have at that time. You change any of the conditions, you might have to change your protocols.
Any comments on that, Dan? I don't even see the question, to be honest. So
Well,
I'm trying.
Detecting bacteria, there's a couple ways to deal with that. And the most common way to deal with it historically has been to have a necropsy done on the animal after um, post-mortem, and that will give you an idea, not always conclusive, but an idea. The other way that's just coming out that's not quite up to par yet and widely available and known about is to do DNA testing from water samples in your tank.
Good answer.
And,
I'm
have you
I'm
places that you know of now that do it, and at what cost?
Yeah, there is a company that is starting to do it. I don't know the cost, but what they're in the process of doing is collecting samples from different hobbyists to it's really cool. What they can do is they can take a small water sample and be able to tell you what species of what is in the water
oh yeah.
and what count and what percentage and counts they are. And as that becomes more mainstream, you could send a water sample off on a monthly basis, for example, and you would know if your bacterial counts or your protozoan counts are suddenly changing and getting worse. And if you have a sick animal, you could then find out, by that water sample, which bacteria is predominantly in that tank that's causing problems.
Which is
I'm
amazing. And if
not,
go ahead,
sure.
Ray. Go
I'm
ahead.
not sure I'm prepared to accept DNA from commercial sources, because if it's anything like the people that do these DNA tests are getting ripped off.
We talked about this once before, and if
Yes,
Lucy's
we did.
still if Lucy's still watching, I know that she did a post about this and she's kind of researched it a bit. So Lucy, rock on with any information you have or any comments you have. I know you can't join. We love that you just come. Um,
The CBC here in Canada does a program, and they send in a bunch of samples, and the results were kind of iffy from what was known, the history of the people. But the most telling thing was one the main girl on the show. I forget what you would call her, but uh, she has an identical twin.
mm-hmm.
They sent in both samples separate. Names were different, and the results were different.
Right. I mean, I know it's not perfected, but all I have to say is I think it'll be really, really a great thing and a cool thing and an advancement. I just worry about people chasing numbers. I hear Dan trying to say something. Go ahead, Dan. Oh, I caught you off
No,
guard.
I wasn't trying to say something, but
Oh,
no, but I agree with Ray on part of that, in that there's these websites that are trying to do genealogy with DNA. Um, that's a whole lot different than what we're talking about with doing tank samples.
right.
Um, in the sampling for the tanks is a whole lot more economical than this genealogy stuff.
Not as like detailed, not as hard to figure out kind of thing is basically the deal.
Well, what you're finding with here is with a tank sample, you're finding what's in the water,
Right.
not what the history of what the tank was or
Gotcha.
everybody else's tank. And, we still have a ways to go because, we all know that there's bacteria and protozoans in all of our tanks.
Right.
You know, people freak out when they hear something about mycobacteria, for example. Well, mycobacteria is ever present. It's around everywhere.
Mm.
Um, but
Don't
but
be
if the
scared, people. It's okay. Go ahead.
but if the counts were to suddenly skyrocket up, well, that's an indication that it has gone. Um, the
Yeah.
pathologic the pathological gene has been turned on and it's going rampant in the tank.
Right.
You
My
know, in
only.
that in,
Sorry.
in that case, certain measures need to be taken.
Right.
Um, but if your tests come back and everything else is normal in the tank in relation to the majority of the other tanks, then you don't have a problem with the tank itself.
Right. I just my fears only revolve around the fact that I want to know how economical the pricing for these testings will be, because you'd have to have your base test to know the differences. You'd have to continually, it just sounds like it might get kind of expensive. And the fact that most people don't even realize what all's in our tanks to begin with, I just think it might cause kind of a scare, and people throwing fish and seahorses into medications when they don't need to be, just because something's present. So hopefully there will be a lot of education attached, and etc. If you guys have any more comments, please feel free to say them. But I did notice that MS was asking some questions about some seahorses in his aquarium. Do you guys see these?
Yeah, well, the questions were back to why they lost the H. reedi, and at this point, no one knows, and no one will know for sure. There, you could take some guesses, but realistically, there's just no way of knowing.
Well, for anyone watching that doesn't read the comments, the question was, a new seahorse hobbyist just bought 2 red-eye seahorses and one died. The assumption was because it didn't tolerate sudden turning on of full light. It's in a 30-gallon tank with a Kessel A89. And I was just reading the comments, nothing came of it. I see Salty Reef, thank you for answering the questions. Went through the parameters and etc. And there's just no answer, Dan, basically.
Well, I mean, there's so many possibilities. Without a complete history, you can't really narrow it down. We don't know what the acclimation was. We don't know the source of the reedi. We don't know of any stressors. It could have been a congenital defect. It could have been a bacterial issue. It could have been a parasitic issue. Um, we don't know what the temperature of the tank was. There's just so many small little details that you would need to try to help isolate it. And even then, you can't really without doing a necropsy. And even a necropsy is not 100% post-mortem.
Sure. And my only question is, the other red-eye is doing well and still fine. I noticed one comment that said the tank was a month old. Kind of curious about all those questions Dan just asked, and a few more, and just if the other seahorse is still doing well. So let us know. Also, I saw the question: what is the best way to feed seahorses with the least leftover food sitting at the bottom? And I see Ray's answering it. Do you want to answer it out loud, Ray?
Sorry, I'm typing here and I got out of the conversation again.
Okay, that's okay. That's all
The
right.
horses with the least left over. Well, a lot of people use turkey baster and they use feeding dishes, but if you have a lot of seahorses, the odds are some of them aren't going to feed so well under those conditions. So I gave up years ago, and I broadcast feed all the time now.
Hmm.
And I'm just typing a part of that. I rinse the frozen food first in a mesh net that allows the small pieces to wash through and not into the tank, because those pieces the seahorses generally don't eat. And it's going to be left to decay and cause more loading on the tank. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first part. Then the amount that a lot of people feed is way more than what they need. And I literally think that the feces are going to be passing out stuff that hasn't been properly used up in the digestive tract, as they don't have a proper tract anyway. But just a combination of a lot of things. So the other thing that I like about it is that it makes the seahorses much more active,
Mm-hmm.
especially as I'm doing it 4 times a day. I know 4 times a day they're going to be really active,
Sure.
which I think can't be anything but good for them. Just personal thing to me.
Sure. And I did see the question from Chris asking whether or not a feeding station is better to broadcast feeding, which you just gave your opinion. Dan, what's your opinion?
Yes, no, and maybe.
Right?
Um, no, a feeding station can be fine if it's set up correctly, and there's 10 gazillion ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as long as you don't have a tube sitting there with stagnant water in it, the feeding station is fine. Some seahorses are trainable to the feeding station.
Hmm.
and they will actually sit there and be waiting on the food when they're hungry.
Oh yeah.
Um, I broadcast feed as well, but I have bare bottom tanks and I can
Mm.
siphon out excess food that's left over very easily. And also, in my case, I can't use a feeding station because I have too many seahorses. Um, kind of hard when you got 75 seahorses in a tank to get them all
Sure.
lined up at a feeding station. So,
Sure.
um, you know,
And in
it
it, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just what I have to do. I do like the concept of a feeding station, but a feeding station doesn't have to be some type of fancy gadget that you buy somewhere. One of the most effective feeding stations I've used is a damn cereal bowl.
Right. I actually have a video somewhere on this channel showing me using a Tupperware dish, plastic Tupperware kind of thing that was obviously either new or cleaned, but as a feeding dish with one of those nori clips. That's what I used for one of my feeding dishes. And the only other thing that I would say that might be a problem when you use a feeding dish is I've talked to a lot of people who have experienced seahorses with different temperaments or personalities or whatever you want to call it, where some of them will rush over and eat, and some of them are just, I don't know, lazier, shyer, not as aggressive at getting the food. And so you just got to make sure that all the seahorses are eating. And if you have a mixed tank with other fish, it becomes even more of a thing. So, yeah. But I personally broadcast feed too. So, and Mermaids Reef wanted to know if we have a recommended rec. Guys, I had to work at 7 a.m. this morning. I am so sorry. I'm so tired. So if I'm not making sense, I apologize. Uh, Mermaids Reef wants to know if we have a recommendation for a good feeding station. Dan, do you have, or Ray, do you have any that you prefer or think are best?
Yeah, cereal bowl.
There you go. Go through the videos, y'all. Go through the videos. And by the way, if anybody's watching this, make sure to subscribe. I found out that like most of the people that watch this aren't subscribed to the channel. Subscribe, y'all. And but yeah, no, I use the nori thing too. Ray, what were you gonna say?
I've used anything from shells because
Hmm.
my reef tanks, I used to have one tank specifically for butterfly, and I would have tanks with substrate in them, and I'd be at the store and I'd buy these big clams and I'd keep them in uh, a tank with all this substrate in. Then I would just pull them out, open them up, toss them in a butterfly tank for them to feed on.
Hmm.
And of course, I got a lot of shells that way. And
Sure.
so some of the bigger ones, when I was trying to feed via the feeding dish route, that's what I started with. And then I switched to a little bowl that used to have cactus plants in it. Um, there's a few different plants in it and a bunch of rocks and stuff, but the bowl curved on the sides and turned back in towards the center before it was an opening there, and it made it easier to keep the food in there
Mm.
when you had good circulation in the tank.
Sure, I've had a lot of people ask how you could even make a feeding station work if you're providing adequate flow, because we all know seahorses don't need the low flow, no flow, whatever they used to say. And my personal method is to use power heads that or wave makers that have a feed mode, and I literally turn them off. But Ray just described another way that you could possibly pull that off. And with the deep dishes, often it's not as big of a problem. With some of those feeding stations, though, I could see it being an issue. And I personally would say that flow is more important than having a spot that you're feeding. What do you think, Dan? I hear you're typing. Sorry. um,
No, that's all right. I've never had a real problem with it. Sometimes you have to experiment on placement or where you put it based upon
sure.
the individual tank, and um, I prefer to keep the flow on. And the thing
Hmm.
I like about broadcast feeding is with the flow on, it basically shoots the food all over the tank, and the seahorses go chasing after it.
Right.
Um, I prefer that method in term when I have a lot of seahorses to make sure that everybody is going after the food, but you will have seahorses that are aggressive and immediately chase it. You have others
Mm-hmm.
that wait for it to comes to them,
Yep.
and you have others that wait for it to settle before they'll eat it.
I had one
Um,
female that literally I had to target feed no matter what. She would not go after food, period. I had to hand it to her. It was so ridiculous.
um,
Go ahead.
Somebody else asked about is mysis shrimp only okay? And what I can tell you is that over the years and watching people, I've had many customers that have only fed mysis shrimp, unenriched, not trying to add stuff to it, and that's all they fed, and they had seahorses for 8 to 10 years.
Right.
Um, it is a good idea to occasionally add something else in. The most economical is brine shrimp and enriching them, but small ghost shrimp, amphipods, or anything like that is not a bad thing to add on a periodic basis. You just don't need to do it every day.
Right. That's kind of how I do it personally. For a very long time, I fed just frozen mysis. I like PE and Hikari, if anybody cares. But I'll buy whatever's there if I have to. I just make sure it's not outdated, brown, or looks like it's been refrozen is the big deal. And rinse it, as Dan mentioned. But yeah, I spent quite a while just feeding with mysis and then added these treats like enriched snacks when I started breeding. It's a great thing. It helps, I think, but it's not, you could get by with just mysis. I agree. Ray, were you going to say something?
I used to buy PE for my redive many years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but when I transitioned to Erectus, very few of them would eat the damn stuff. And now I find even my abs at the size of them, they
Mm-hmm.
don't want the PE because it's bigger. I even had the store that I order from for my Hikari frozen food misordered, and I got the jumbo um, Hikari.
Right.
Uh,
I remember you saying that. You know
that,
what? I got those
and
once
they
though
won't even eat
too.
that.
They're completely different. They're very weird. The jumbos are not the same at all. So, anyways, go on.
No, that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, no. Um, I've had the same experience where certain seahorses prefer smaller or larger, but I just think that typically by the next feeding they're going to eat it. It has been my experience. But you should always look for what they like and kind of stick with that for sure. I wanted to mention really quickly, I've noticed that in a lot of the seahorse groups on Facebook, that Seahorse Savvy, Alyssa, has been posting quite a few really great articles about coloration, feeding, etc. So when you see those links, guys, click on them and share them because they're very good articles. And until I get our website done, she's providing the great information that everyone needs. So, ooh, what are we looking at, Dan?
Well, I was just showing you some of the mini Erectus.
Wow. You got to put your hand up so we can, I mean, because they're beautiful, but, they don't look, oh, now see how small they are? See how small, okay. All right, wow.
Down here, where are we going? Some of
Where,
them are a little bit bigger, but most of them are, you know, average size is probably, tip of the tail to the tip of the crown, around 3.5 inches, with some of them being real small. Like there's a couple of
right.
them in here that are real tiny. There's a guy in the background back there that's real tiny.
Oh my goodness, yes. I can't even believe it. And that's the same age.
Yeah, well, in this tank, there's a few of them that are bigger that are not the dwarfs.
Okay.
Same thing over here. These are not all completely dwarfs.
So is that a regular size?
Well, considering they're almost a year old, I consider them small, you know?
Yeah. Can you put your hand up one
Usually,
more time on these guys? It's just hard to see in the video. Yeah, see, Now, when I'm looking at them, they look like my seahorses, but they're not at all.
Well, to give it a better way to do it is probably this way here.
Okay.
See if I can get my hand. Where the hell is my hand?
It's hard. We're putting you on the spot. Thank you, Dan.
But see this
Look
guy
at
in relation?
that. Oh my gosh. So cute.
Oops. Gotta go feed my seahorses.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
I'd be lost without these bloody alarms.
It's okay. Okay, go on, Dan. I'm sorry. Or were you done?
No, that's all right. I was just giving you an idea of what I meant by dwarf seahorses.
Are you? If it's too much to ask, it's fine. But can you show? Oh, did you already walk out the door? I was gonna say, do you have any of the larger seahorses to give like a quick view of the comparison, or no?
Well, the tank is a mess.
Okay, no worries, no worries.
Hold on.
Okay, if you guys say pretty please in the comments, maybe he'll show us. Don't we want to see Dan's aquariums? Like literally, y'all, I'm trying to get to Florida just to see these aquariums. So, not aquariums, tubs, but anyhow. Kim said,
Give me just a minute.
It's all good.
Come on.
And
Let's
guys,
see if I can.
sorry. I'm gonna go read the comments in just a second, guys. We want to
There you
see
go.
what Dan's doing. Okay. Wow. Now look at that. And that, can I have that seahorse, please? Because that is just the most beautiful seahorse. Oh my goodness. And do you guys see now? Because you can't really tell when you're just looking at the video, but when you see it compared to his hand, that thing was as big as his hand, whereas the others are like that big. Adorable. I don't know what you're saying. I'm live. Sorry. Kids, sorry. Anyhow, thank you so much for sharing, Dan. That's so cool. I don't like to give things away, but I personally really like to get some. I'll talk to you after the show. But anything else you want to say about them or share about them, or I mean, they're just the same, right?
Yeah, they're virtually identical except for size.
Yeah.
And I came up with a way to make them miniaturized. And what I don't know is if they do breed, if the offspring will be small. I expect they won't. I expect them to be normal.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't mess with the genetics. It was something entirely different the way I made them small.
Was it, I know you, obviously we don't expect you or want you to give away your secrets, but was it along the lines of selective breeding kind of thing?
No, it's a proprietary, it's, you know.
Okay, fair enough. Proprietary thing, we don't get to know. But he has them and that's it. So if you want them, you got to go there.
It's kind of like the piebalds. I made the piebalds and I can, you know, turn that on, turn it off, and I can do the same thing with the miniature Erectus.
See, I mean, we should feel so fortunate that Dan shares all this stuff with us, you guys, because he's been doing this for a long time and knows his stuff. And if you have things that you want me to try to get him to talk about, please comment away because I sure will bug him and make him. But anyhow, okay. Well, I wanted to check the comments, but I didn't want to cut you off at all. Was there anything else you did want to say about them? Just that they're awesome.
They're awesome. They eat frozen food just like the regular ones, and they're just smaller.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, before I do go to questions, I wanted to ask you a question about oxygenation of an aquarium, because I was getting a lot of questions recently on videos about power heads, how many, what you need, and etc. And I mentioned Abby's advice about using the combined method with either the hob or the pump in the sump, providing so much, like 10 to 15% or 10 to 15% gallon per hour turnover, and then using 1 to 2 power heads to create that additional 5 to 10% that does the circulation flow. And I just still think Abby's words and advice were so amazing and great that I always quote them. But is there anything else that you would recommend regarding placement and or surface agitation when it comes to flow?
Well, first of all, my first recommendation is don't go with a tall, narrow tank or a hex tank.
Okay.
Um, I like a wider tank that has more surface area. Your oxygenation occurs at the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And the tension, the water tension level can affect your oxygenation. Your flow rate can affect it. All of our tanks have the water coming in at the top, blowing the water around.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I do know what you're
and
saying, but let me interrupt you and ask you, do you mean the return going like above the surface, below the surface, or at the surface? Or does it matter?
well, to give you an idea,
Okay. This is so cool, you guys.
let's see if I can get around here. Okay, there's one of my returns coming into the tank.
Okay.
So it's agitating the surface, and
Okay.
it's basically half in the water and half out. Okay,
Gotcha.
the other return is going down into the tank.
Okay.
So you don't see the water action from it. It's designed to help blow some of the stuff around the bottom, but this one comes in from the top, and this breaks the surface tension and helps with the oxygenation.
Yep. That's yeah, exactly. I wanted to be sure that I was correct because that's exactly what I said. I just wanted to make sure I was correct. But anyhow, very cool and we appreciate. What else you want to show us? Cuz I'm loving this.
Everything's a mess here. I mean,
Do
I
we
got an
care, you
empty.
guys? Do we care? Tell them we don't care. No, it's okay, Dan. But what were you going to say? You have an empty what?
That's my
Look at
breeding
that.
room, and all the tanks are empty.
Do you guys see the hearts flowing from my eyes and the tears because they're empty? Oh, but anyhow, still so cool. Well, if you decide to share anymore, we're right here, Dan. We're right here. But because that's so cool. And guys, that's what I hope you guys do when you have a problem or like a success or anything. Bring it in here. Get on video just like Dan did. Show us. Share it. Come on now. All right, but I did want to make sure I did see the questions. I can't keep up with all
Well,
your jokes. Go ahead, Dan.
um, asked if I have a website, and I did, but I've had problems with it, and I don't want to put the money into it because I've gone part time from doing this full time after 15 years, and not being able to keep up with it. I don't believe it's currently working. So, for people to get a hold of me, you have to email me, or call me, or message me.
I will be absolutely sure to to share links to contact Dan in the comments as soon as we're done. And I also will be discussing with Dan soon if he might not want to on the side, since he's slowed down in the business side, maybe just use the website that we put up to share these things. But we'll talk about that on the side. Either way, we'll put up contact information for certain as soon as I'm done. And anything else that I missed, Dan, before I go looking?
I think that's it.
Okay. I see we're talking bare bottom, etc. Blah blah blah. I thought I saw a question that I really thought we should make sure to cover, but I can't find it. Guys, if I missed it, please make sure to ask again because I have missed it now. I can't find it. So,
Well, Kim asked bottom pointing specific to bare bottom. It's not pointing directly at the bottom. It's pointed to the side of the tank, which in turn bounces off and goes to the bottom. But the tanks are bare bottom, and the purpose of that is to help kick the food back up in the detritus, so that I catch it in the sump.
you know, I know why she's asking that, and I've got a quick question. Really quick, I just want to describe what the answer I gave on the video when they asked about placement is. I personally, in a larger tank especially, I've got the return as Dan described, either right above, at, or below the surface, creating that surface agitation. Then I've got one power head kind of doing the main circulation throughout the tank, and then I've got one lower that points up to kind of push anything from the bottom up. but I know what she's talking about, Dan, and it's because we've read so many things about if you point, like, say, a canister spray bar down, or if you point a return straight down, something goes wrong. I can't really remember what goes wrong, but something does. Do you know what I'm talking about at all?
Well, it depends upon, the setup, I mean, for example, if you have, whether you have a sump or not, if you have a sump and you have good oxygenation in the sump, your return is going to be different than if you have a hang on the back that's pointing downward and not agitating the surface.
Okay, so it's
So,
really about surface agitation, and then you can do
yeah, well,
it.
surface agitation helps, but remember, a tank is only going to get to a certain percentage of oxygenation no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you super saturate the tank, then you have, the issue with gas bubbles, and not gas bubble disease like we're talking with seahorses, just super saturation of oxygen or gases in the water with any fish will cause gas bubbles. But it's almost impossible to do that with the low pressure pumps that we have in aquariums. It takes a high pressure pump injecting air into the water for that to happen.
Right. Gotcha. Sorry. I don't do, guys, like I said, 7 a.m. work, and I'm trying to keep up and etc. So I'm not gonna keep apologizing. All right. And I
I've heard
saw
that one before.
shush, Ray. Okay, so I saw Ichthyo stuff. I like that name. I'm really curious about what you're up to, buddy. Um, but he mentioned efflux 660s that are small and controllable. That's another thing that I do absolutely advise is when you're talking about any kind of wave maker, pump, etc. Get the adjustable ones. Even if they're the cheap adjustable ones, they're better than non-adjustable. I personally, I'm a cheap, so I've gone with the Jabeos, but they've done a great job. Um, the only time I ever had trouble was in my reef when I dealt with a really crappy vendor. Other than that, and it wasn't Jabeo. I mean, like the middleman. Anyhow, in every other tank, I've had great luck, and it's really worked out well, and I can set it the way that I want to. So adjustable, great point.
Almost all mine are that.
Gotcha.
I've never had anything that was adjustable.
Well, the DC pumps are not only they adjustable in terms of flow rate, but they're also very quiet.
Mm.
They're they're almost vibration free the way that they operate. They also consume less electricity. They're 12-volt pumps instead of the typical AC pumps.
I'm still using power heads that I bought when I started into the salt water back in the 94, 95.
You said what?
I'm still using the same power heads I bought for my reef and other saltwater tanks back in 94, 95.
Yeah, well, that's really great. That's
They don't
really a
have any
good thing,
adjustments on it. They just keep on working.
man. Well, what do you guys suggest? Obviously, Ray just said that his equipment has lasted all this time. Do either
Not
of
all of
you?
them, but more than half of them.
Sure. I was just going to ask, what kind of advice do you give when people ask backup equipment? Should they have it? When should they make sure they have it? Is it that important? Or, because with certain things like flow and pump and etc., man, you can't go very long without it. So, should people always have spare?
Uh, well, I've got enough power heads that gets me by, so I'm in a different situation. But at one time, when I was using everything that I had, if something went, and maybe I would pull a pump out of one tank and use it on another because it wasn't as critical, something like that. But if worse come to worse, my air pumps put out so much air that there was no problem using air for circulation. Um, and because I had a couple of those, One will actually do pretty well everything I have now because I don't have all the big skimmers that I used to have.
Sure.
But I still use the two of them anyway. It just makes it easier for me. They're both hooked in together. If one fails, the other one still carries the load. So,
Gotcha. I saw
but
some, I just wanted to mention really quickly that Samantha did mention also, very good point, that with equipment, washing or soaking them every 3 months can really help their longevity. But I'm sorry, Ray, if I interrupted you, go ahead. I just want
no,
to make sure I said it. Okay. Um, Salty says always have a spare and do proper maintenance. So what do you mean by spares though? Like, this I saw a question earlier about how expensive the hobby is and this addiction and how to keep it under limits and still enjoy it while not going broke, basically. I did see your question. I forget who asked it, but I saw it. Anyhow, what say you, Sir Ray or Dan?
Well, if you looked at commercial aquaculture, a properly set up system has two pumps, and one pump is running, the other pump is not. It's on standby and it's ready to go if needed. Simply switching a couple valves and turning the pump on is all that it takes. Same thing on a sailboat. We have backup redundancy in that fashion. For the average hobbyist starting off with one tank, most of them are scrimping to get by, and it's kind of hard to justify going out and buying, excess equipment. For those of us that have been doing it for some time, we end up with
Right.
um, replacement parts, and I probably have a half dozen pumps around that are usable, but not what I prefer to run because I've upgraded the pumps or changed the pumps for whatever reason. In
Mhm.
fact, at one time, when I sat down and looked at the pumps that I was using and the wattage they were drawing, I replaced all my pumps at one time, and it was expensive, but my payback was within a year. And because I cut my electric in half with the pumps by going to pumps that were more efficient.
Sure.
Um, so I always have. I'm in a position like Ray that I have other pumps that I can throw in if I need to get me by until if it's not exactly right, I can get by with it until I can get another pump in.
Absolutely. And for anyone that is new to the hobby, I would sincerely recommend looking in your area for a local reef club because the people in these reef clubs are typically really amazing. And what's happened to me numerous times is if I didn't have the equipment that I needed and something broke, I just happened to meet someone that's within the reef club that lives close to me and they'll help you for real. You can post in their forums and say, "Oh, I've got this emergency. Can anybody help me?" I've had situations where I didn't have, artemia or eggs to hatch, and I've been helped. So look up your local reef clubs or even your state reef clubs or whatever. So they'll help for sure. And I just wanted to mention that MS asked you cover power heads so that seahorses do not end up inside of them. Abso-freaking-lutely. Whether it be a heater or a power head or anything else, yeah, cover it. You keep it away from them for certain. I personally use mesh. I can't think of the actual name of it. Do you know what I'm talking about, Dan? The mesh. Um,
Well, there's all kinds of different mesh. If I was doing something like that, I have fencing material that is all mesh that ranges from very small in diameter up to 1 inch in diameter. So I could build a cage out of it. But some of the hobby stuff there's mesh stuff, plastic mesh that you can put over it. You
sure.
can also use fabric type mesh over it.
I
There's
know Lucy uses nets and different netting. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you're limited to your imagination in terms of putting something over them.
Hmm.
I don't use power heads myself, so I don't have that issue.
Right.
even gutter guard works.
What'd you
You know,
say, Ray?
even gutter guard works. This plastic stuff that you put over your eaves trough to keep the leaves out.
Sure. I
Yep.
just want to mention
That up
though.
in two sizes. I've even formed it into a shape and used a glue gun to keep it in the shape and fasten it onto power heads.
I just want to mention though that when you do buy those types of materials, be sure that they're not treated, because if they're treated, it can mess with the water and the chemistry and everything else. So just be sure they're not treated. Anyways, go on.
Well, if you're worried about them being treated, throw them in a bucket with some bleach and let them sit for 24 hours. And
Great plan, great advice.
then throw them in fresh water for a few days and use them.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Okay, I thought I saw something else that I had to mention. Oh, and also with some of the new pumps, they're actually coming out with attachments that cover them. So very, very cool. Don't ask where you get the lace fabric, eh, Kim? Okay. Right. We're friends now. I'm just kidding. But anyhow, wonder if the Gyri mesh would fit on the little Jabeos. I don't know, because when I got the Gyri that I have is not the true Gyri. I got the Jabeo fake Gyri or whatnot. And if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Chris from Australia, I apologize. Gyri, whatever it's called. Anyhow, in that one, I still, again, used the plastic mesh. So if you find out, Mermaid's Reef, please let us know. And Dan Hush. All right, anyhow. What else do we need to discuss, guys? I'm sorry. Like I mentioned, I'm a little tired tonight, so you might have to call me if I'm missing stuff. What else do we need to talk about? You guys in the comments, I see some new people. MS, if I have missed any or many of your questions, please feel free to message me or message anyone in the conversation or comment again. It's not on purpose. It's the tired and it's the problem with comments. But let me know how your holidays were. Salty, stop laughing at me. And let me know how your holidays were, what's going on with your seahorses, what questions you have, what else we should be asking about the Dwarf Erectus, why we keep hearing Dan open and cook a bottle. Just kidding. Just kidding. Oh, I know what else I had to tell you guys. In case you don't follow the Seahorse Whisperer Society on Facebook, I made a post the other day. Sing Bio is coming up. Did you guys see where it's at?
Yeah, well, too bad.
What do you think? What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, first of all, I don't really want to go to China.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
I don't know.
Somebody might decide to bomb it.
No, I'm not worried about that so much. It'd probably be an interesting place to visit. It's just that my mode of getting there, I don't really want to do that.
Sure. Gotcha. I understand that. But don't you think it's an interesting place for Sing Bio to be held?
Well, if you look, every other year they have it someplace, and then they have one in the United States every other year.
Really?
So
I didn't notice that.
I mean, yeah, Sing Bio before was in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and they had one in South America. But if you watch, it's every 2 years for the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, cool, but I still want to go to China. So, I mean, I'm just telling y'all. And if anybody doesn't know, look for the post, obviously. But Sing Bio is like the Signathid place to be. Go ahead, Dan.
But I don't think it's really for the average hobbyist, though.
No, it's not. It's not. It's about the science. It's about the advancements. It's a lot about conservation, but it's still. I want to be there.
It's about conservation. It's public aquarium people and scientific people and stuff like that. And it's, the topics are going to be more in depth,
sure,
more in detail. They're not going to relate to the hobby per se.
You got to be crazy like me if you're interested in learning truly about like what's going on with seahorses in the wild and what new species that are coming out and what the scientists are learning and etc. it's the place to be. I just want to be there so badly. I understand, you're right, Dan. Hobbyists, it's not the thing probably, but I just think it's so cool. And the fact that it's in China, you guys. I mean, for anybody watching that doesn't understand this, I'm just gonna blurt it out. Chinese medicine is the number one place that all the dried seahorses go. Okay, we've kind of wiped out wild caught seahorses in the hobby because everybody buys captive bred because of fantastic breeders like Alyssa, Dan, and all the home breeders that are, making the difference in their small areas. So everybody buys captive bred now, and so the main focus that conservation is fighting is Chinese medicine, which uses seahorses in many of their medications. But here's the catch, and I'm going to say it live and publicly. If you want me to link the articles, I can, because there have been many scientific articles that have dove into whether or not the claims of Chinese medicine might not be accurate. Not saying they are or aren't. I'm just saying that making any call one way or the other is premature because we don't really know. And so I just think it's fascinating that we're holding this event that has to do with conservation, that has to do with new species and protecting them, and how to do all this stuff in China is just so big to me. I just think it's amazing. But
Well, I just hope that they take some of the group to the South China fisheries and let them see exactly how big the breeding program is in China.
right, I would like for you to say more about that, Dan, if you would. But I really quickly, I wanted to say also that I saw an article literally right before we went live that the Chinese government, I think it was in July, it's been a while, but the Chinese government literally captured and put in jail these people that were exporting like $6.4 million worth of dried seahorses, because even though they use them for traditional Chinese medicine, I really feel like they're trying to do it the right way and not do it illegally. So go ahead, Dan.
Well, there is a push for uh,
Sure.
producing the seahorses for TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, through captive means. And there is a black market for dried seahorses. There's no question about that. But the Chinese in general are, they've invested a tremendous amount of money. They have a tremendous breeding program. And the breeding program that they have in China would smoke anything that we have anywhere else in terms of size.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. They're doing big numbers. And if you look at the papers coming out on research on seahorses, the Chinese are smoking everybody with the amount of papers that are being published and the amount of research that they're doing.
Right.
And I can tell you this: I've dealt with, I know a couple of the guys over there personally, but when they buy stuff, it's, everybody beats the crap out of me for pricing. Those guys, how much do you want and how many can you give me?
Right. Oh, I know. I know. And I mean, I really want to say publicly that I think it's really cool that although they're literally in some cases proving that some things that they're saying might be right when it comes to traditional Chinese medicine, they're still trying to do things the right way. Like you said, trying to do it sustainably.
It's
Some of
it's
them,
not as
some of them.
bad. It's not as bad as the people with the counters of when seahorses are going to become extinct. There's one
Right.
conservation group
Right.
that actually has a counter on their website on how many years, days, months, hours before seahorses become extinct.
What website's
And
this? Okay, tell me later.
um,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, the the thing is that you got to remember, conservation groups get their money from people who are afraid that that's going to come to be, so they give all kinds of money to fund them.
Right. And we're just for the record, guys, we're not saying they don't need to be protected. They do. In certain situations, it's not a good thing. And we're talking black market, not a good thing. But that's why this is so fascinating. It's so fascinating to me that they were able to set this up. We're going to have literally Project Seahorse, people, along those lines, mixing with the Chinese government in a room. Oh my gosh, I want to be there so badly. I wanted to be there every single time just because I think it's fascinating. But in this case, oh, I would give anything. Really. Do you guys think I should start a GoFundMe? I'm just kidding. I won't. I promise I won't. But man, I would do anything to be there. Huh. Okay. And Salty Reef said, fear is a motivator for change. I don't.
Well,
I
fear
don't
is
think
a motivator, period.
it is. But what do you
I
mean
mean,
fear? I don't
well,
follow.
being afraid of something, I mean, if you think a bad guy's behind you, you're probably going to run faster than if you didn't think one was behind
True.
you. I mean,
Truth.
um, if you got a bad habit and you all of a sudden you're a fear for a health reason, you're likely to change that bad habit because of the fear.
True. How does
Um,
it relate to this?
well,
7 a.m.,
fear,
guys. I'm a little slow. Sorry.
okay, the loss of seahorses. People are afraid they're going to lose them, so
Oh,
they jump in and try to do
gotcha.
things. But it just irritates me that they use false pretenses and false numbers, or I won't say false numbers, unproven numbers, um, with what they're saying.
Sure. Sure. Someone, discussions were occurring earlier today, and I just, in many of these types of situations, I finally just come to the conclusion that, one side's going to think this way, one side's going to think that way. Bottom line, there's
Well,
probably truth both in both
they're,
areas. Go ahead.
they're using statistics, and their statistics are to their benefit, what they want. And you got to remember, statistics don't tell you everything. They're kind of like a bikini. They show you a lot but not everything.
Gotcha. Sorry, Salty. I was still thinking about how cool it was to have this in China. I was like, why is that
you know
fearful? I'm tired. Go ahead, Dan.
Kim said, "Good luck eating, Kelly," and I have to agree with that. If you saw how some of the Chinese prepare meals and go to the open air markets and saw how food was done, you would probably have a difficult time over there.
Well, no, I'm going to be sitting on your boat, Dan. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I hear you. I don't care. I just think it'll be really cool. I'm not going to get there, guys, so no worries. But yeah, I can't wait to hear what occurs there, because I think that some of these types of events need a a jack cracker. I can't even say the words, guys. Cracker jack like me to be like, you know, bringing up these topics that nobody wants to discuss. Because when they hush it and, just say what they want to say and nobody really talks, and I don't know. I just hope we get something out of it. I'd love to hear what the conversations are on both sides, and I'm sure we will. It'll be cool. But, anyways, I'm done rambling. What do you got going on, Ray? Did you feed the seahorses? Everything good?
Yeah, they're all dead.
Good.
No change in the one in the hospital tank.
No?
At least it's not worse than what it was earlier.
And what are you using in the hospital tank?
Well, all I've got is the Furan 2. Well, I shouldn't. No, I've got one packet of trisulfa left, but like I can't get anything anymore.
Mm.
Here now, I have to take the seahorse into a vet, and the cheapest one around is $80 for just to see it. And then if they agree, then they give you a prescription, and then you pay through the nose for something
Sure.
that you paid $10 for before and had enough to keep you for a year. You're going to pay $50 for now, and only have enough for a few days.
Mm.
How tough is customs with mail delivery?
Tough. I tried that. Got
Gotcha.
confiscated, and then I got warned.
Okay.
What?
So anyway, it's a sign of the times, and like
Well, do you have
anyone like that?
Ray,
Australia's like that, and UK is like that.
Ray, does the seahorse have an open wound?
It looks like part of it is becoming open.
Okay.
It
My
didn't appear
suggestion,
to be open last night.
my suggestion would be to consider ordering in some Alimax.
Some who?
Mm.
Alimax.
Ellie?
A, yeah, I'm gonna write it and post it. It's
I've got bio band-aids that I've been putting
right.
on.
Well, I just posted it on the comments.
Yeah.
Okay, you can get it on Amazon, and Alimax is a garlic is a very powerful antibiotic or antibacterial, anti
Oh, I
fungal.
switched the garlic. I,
Yeah, but
I
this
thought
is
I
different
did
because what you have to understand is the main part of garlic that's so effective is when you take the two enzymes allicin and allinase together, it makes allicin.
yeah,
Allicin is very, very effective, but it's
not
unstable.
stable. Yeah.
Okay.
Why
Well,
you have to keep putting it in.
right. Well, Peter Josling in England figured out how to make it stable, and Alimax is allicin that's been stabilized,
I
and you can put a drop of that. Pat the area dry with a paper towel.
Yeah,
Put one drop on the wound. It's not going to treat the internal, but the wound itself, I'm telling you, it'll clear that up lickety split.
yeah, yeah. The only thing I've ever used like that was this. Yeah, now the name has gone out of my head.
But I actually had, I was going to the thing in Michigan, what the hell's the name of it, Kelly?
Marine Breeding Initiative.
Yeah, I was giving a talk up there, and the day before I was to fly out, I had scraped my hands, or my two of my fingers had abrasions on them, and a week beforehand, and putting my hands in the tank, I wasn't thinking about it. And the day before I left, I looked at it, my hand was hurting. I looked down, and not only were the areas scraped had become inflamed and really nasty looking, but I had red streaks going up my hand. So I
Jeez.
took Alimax and I put it on the abrasions every hour for 5 hours. The next morning when I got up, there was no swelling in my hand. The red streaks were gone, and it it looked almost normal.
That's so
It,
crazy.
it,
So great,
uh,
but crazy.
I use it for ear infections. My grandson, who has had several outbreaks of uh, uh, it's like almost like a rash. It's from MRSA, from when he was a baby, and they give my daughter all these antibiotics and salves and stuff to put on there, and every time I have to go to her and say, "Put the Alimax on." She does, in 24 hours, it's gone.
So, I mean, is this something that Ray can get though?
Yes, he can get it through Amazon. It's garlic. I mean, it's
Okay.
not
Yeah,
controlled.
anything garlic, but they don't have any restrictions on that, any form.
All right, Ray. Well, now we're going to need
Tell
you
me,
to try this out.
I think I've got shingles now, and maybe I can use it for that.
Oh,
No,
jeez.
I don't. No, your best thing for the shingles is when you don't have them is to go ahead and get the shot for the preventative stuff.
I had that shot a few years ago.
A shot or a series of shots.
No, it was just I think it was just one.
No, it should have been a series of at
Yeah,
least two.
but I also had chicken pox, and that was supposed to be one thing that helped prevent shingles.
Well, no, chicken pox means the virus that causes chicken pox is shingles.
Yeah, but
So once you have it, you always
No
have it.
kidding?
yeah,
Yes.
but
I had
it
I
says
had chicken pox.
if you have chicken pox, your odds of getting shingles is less.
No, it's greater because you now have the virus in your body.
Well, your National Institute of Health doesn't say that.
Well, they tell people that have had chicken pox in the United States to get the vaccine because it helps prevent it from coming back.
When my wife was dying of cancer, she got shingles, and they
Mhm.
didn't even know it was shingles because it was a double wide band,
Yep.
and they'd never seen anything like that before. And they went for the longest time, had no idea what it was, and then somebody had the guts to say, "Well, it looks like shingles, except that it's too wide." And so then they started treating it for shingles and give her the medications for that. Of course, that made her even sicker. But um, she was kind of uncomfortable with that for a good 6, 7 months.
Well, I can tell you this: having shingles, having chickenpox in your late 30s sucks, and I say that from experience.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so sorry, Ray, to hear about the situation you went through. That's terrible to not know, and then
Well, I
that's
haven't
sad.
got. I'm just going through it. I woke up Sunday morning and I've got
Well,
this
I meant your wife, but I hear
illness
you.
that I didn't have before.
Mm,
Are
dang.
you having the pain or just the outbreak?
Well, it's open sores, um, and it's. I guess the pain is like I fell off a motorbike at 100 miles an hour and scraped myself up on the tarmac.
Mm, yikes.
The
Yeah.
painkillers don't work for me, so
There was a fellow that when I was sailing down from New England, there was this old boy that I think it was in his mid 70s. He was sailing solo and he was going from Maine to Key West. And he had the shingles and he had it so bad that he had to stop and uh, put his boat up for 2 months while he recuperated to where he could continue onward.
Mm.
Um, it sucks. It can be very, very painful when you get those, especially as you get older.
well, the worst part was my wife. She was in so much pain, and I couldn't do a damn thing for her.
Yeah, that's really awful. I'm so
It's like
sorry.
if my dog has a problem, and I don't know what to do, and sometimes the vet doesn't know what to do, and it just tears me up.
Yep.
But it's part of life, I guess. You just have to go with what somebody up there gave us.
Sure. I wish that it was interesting to me that you guys both thought different things. I've noticed that a lot lately that the information has just taken a whole new twist these days where, no matter what we're talking about, it just depends on where you are and who you listen to, what you think is the truth. It's kind of scary even.
Well, the other thing that's really messed up information today is the fact that so many things go out on the internet, and you have two problems with that. The first is false information is posted, or
Mhm.
two, outdated information that never goes away.
Right. And I mean, in general, not to pull politics in because we're not going to, but just in general, that journalism in general is not, real anymore. Everything's opinions. And I don't know. But yeah, agree. Outdated information for sure. And yeah. How would you fix it?
Fix what?
Information being so
You
wrong.
can't anymore.
There isn't an answer to that yet. You know.
Well, we need somebody to
When
answer
you
it, and
look at
when they do, they'll be the next
right.
billionaire. you
Well, the
know,
problem is that with textbooks, you look at what was the last revised copy. You
textbooks.
know.
What do you mean textbooks? My girls don't have textbooks.
I know that, and
Everything is Chromebook. Google is now the author. Sorry.
yep.
Go ahead.
That I believe in researching, and I think it's wise to look things up on the internet, but I also think it's wise to cross-reference and look at multiple sources, not surfaces,
Hmm.
um, and then look at the reliability factor and also when they were posted,
Sure.
because there's a lot of information that's been posted that's grossly outdated. That's still, if you don't do some serious searching, just go with the first answer, you could be dealing with something that's completely wrong.
Absolutely. I will make the comment though that when you find someone that you can, like an author or a person that they know what they're talking about based on whatever, that if you kind of stick with them, that the information's pretty good about lasting the test of time. Like the things that you taught me years ago still are true regarding seahorses. And
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, but to some extent that's true. But information does change. Things are,
Sure.
we learn things. I can tell you from a homeopathic standpoint, I can take somebody who I really like and who I follow and, you know, consider them reliable, but go back 15 years and look at what they posted before that,
Sure.
and it's not the same.
Mhm.
They've learned things since then. And, so, when I'm looking up information, not only do I look at who's posting it, but I look at when it was posted and have they
Absolutely.
posted anything about it since then.
No, great point. Great information. I'm currently, as you guys all know, I'm currently trying to get some um, computer program, computer programming certifications, and in that area, you still want to learn the old stuff and the new stuff. So I'm kind of in that kind of world now. But you're absolutely right, Dan, on everything you said. That the timing, updates, the person, etc., are very important. So,
Yep.
all right, guys. Well, we got kind of off on an odd tangent. Sorry. Did I miss any questions about seahorses? No, I don't think that I did. So, all right, guys. Well, don't forget that you can get the super special, one of a lifetime, once of a lifetime, one of a kind Dwarf Erectus Seahorses only from Dan at Seahorse Source. We'll post the information in the comments if you're interested. And bye, Kim. Bye to everybody.